A desperate gambit. In the cold depths of space, a lone human strike ship slipped silently through the void. The UESS Endeavour was a sleek vessel, built for speed and stealth, but it was dwarfed by the immense Zorgax dreadnought it approached. For months, the war against the ruthless Zorgax Empire had gone badly for the United Earth Federation. The alien adversaries' technology was superior, their numbers seemingly endless. Humanity had won a few scattered victories, but now they teetered on the brink of defeat. Captain Nora Vance stood on the Endeavour's bridge, her eyes fixed on the viewscreen showing their target. The Zorgax command ship hung in space like a monstrous metal behemoth, bristling with weapons. Nora's hand-picked team had one desperate chance to turn the tide of the war. Intelligence reports indicated that this dreadnought housed the central AI that coordinated the entire Zorgax armada. If they could infiltrate the enemy vessel and seize control of that AI, they might be able to throw the alien fleet into disarray. 15 minutes to intercept. Lieutenant Cal Ramirez reported from the helm. The young officer's voice was steady, but Nora could read the tension in his shoulders. They all knew the odds of survival were slim. Nora activated the ship-wide comm. All hands, this is the captain. I won't lie to you. Our mission today is effectively a suicide run. But if we succeed, we give Earth a fighting chance. She paused, letting her words sink in. I'm proud to serve alongside each and every one of you. Whatever happens, we'll show these alien bastards what humanity is made of. Vance out. As the transmission ended, Nora saw steely determination reflected in the eyes of her bridge crew. They were the best of the best, each one ready to lay down their lives for their homeworld. The Endeavour's pilot, Jinasari, spoke up. Approaching their sensor range, Captain. Activating stealth systems. Now. The ship shuddered almost imperceptibly as the advanced cloaking field engaged, wrapping the Endeavour in a bubble of invisibility. Bring us in nice and slow, Gina, Nora ordered, matching velocity with the dreadnought. On the viewscreen, the immense Zorgax ship grew larger and larger until it filled the entire display. The sleek human strike craft slid into position near an auxiliary hangar bay on the dreadnought's port side, hovering unseen and undetected. In the Endeavour's armory, First Sergeant Grayson Cole made the final checks on his strike team's weaponry. The muscular Marine hefted a compact railgun, satisfying himself that the magnetic accelerator was in perfect working order. Around him, the other Marines performed their own pre-battle rituals, whispering prayers or staring grimly at the deck. Cole had fought the Zorgax on half a dozen worlds, seen too many good friends die at the hands of the implacable alien foe. He pictured his wife and daughter back on Earth, praying he would make it home to them. But he put that thought aside. If he let himself be distracted now, he was as good as dead already. Docking tube extended and hard seal confirmed. Ramirez reported over the comm. We've got our boarding path. On the bridge, Nora watched the hangar doors on the viewscreen, her heart pounding. There was no sign that the Zorgax had detected the Endeavour. So far, their audacious plan was working. Breach team, you are green to deploy, she said into her headset mic. In the armory, Cole felt a rush of adrenaline as the captain's order came through. You heard her, Marines. Let's move out and give 'em hell. He led the way into the Endeavour's boarding tube, the metal corridor that now connected the human ship to their alien target. The other Marines followed close behind, weapons ready. Reaching the Zorgax airlock at the far end of the umbilical, Cole placed a breaching charge and primed the detonator. Fire in the hole. The outer airlock door vanished in a flash of plasma, the atmosphere rushing out into space. The Marines lunged forward into the smoky hole, quickly dispatching the handful of surprise Zorgax troopers on guard. As alarm klaxons started to blare throughout the dreadnought, Cole knew their intrusion would not go undetected for long. It was a race against time now. They had to reach the command deck and the AI core before the ship's entire crew mobilized against them. The sergeant led his team at a dead run down the corridor, following the route that Allied intelligence had painstakingly pieced together. Captain Vance watched her Marine's vital signs on the bridge display, silently urging them forward. The shipboard AI's calm voice broke into her thoughts. "Captain, I'm detecting power fluctuations from the Zorgax vessel. I believe they may be attempting to initiate a purge of their computer core." Nora felt a spike of fear. If the Zorgax commander wiped the ship's AI, the mission would be for nothing. They had to hurry. "Cole, double-time it." She snapped into the comlink. "The Zorgax are trying to purge the AI. You have to reach the core before they scrub the system." On the Zorgax ship, Cole cursed as he heard the captain's warning. He pushed his Marines to quicken their already grueling pace, knowing every second counted. As they rounded a corner, plasma bolts sizzed by their heads. A squad of Zorgax troopers had set up a hasty barricade, trying to block the Marines' advance. Suppressing fire, Cole roared, unleashing a hail of steel slugs from his railgun. His team joined in, plasma rifles and frag grenades raining destruction on the enemy position. In moments, the barricade was reduced to twisted metal and twitching alien corpses. The Marines charged forward, leaping over the smoking debris of the Zorgax roadblock. Cole consulted the mission map on his wrist display. "The command deck is just ahead. We're almost there." But even as he said it, a massive blast door started to slide shut across the corridor. The Zorgax shipboard computer trying to bar their way. Cole and his team sprinted for the rapidly narrowing gap, hurling themselves forward in a desperate leap. They hit the deck hard on the far side, rolling back to their feet as the armored door slammed shut with a resounding clang behind them. Rising, the Marines found themselves in a large, circular chamber dominated by a glowing column in the center, the Dreadnought's AI core. Cole smiled grimly. Against all odds, they had made it this far. Now the real fight began. Breaching the defenses. In the AI core chamber, Sergeant Cole and his Marines fanned out, taking up defensive positions around the room's perimeter. They had reached their objective, but Cole knew the mission was far from over. The shipboard AI's core glowed and pulsed with shifting patterns of light, promising unfathomable alien intelligence. "Jacobson, Raman, cover that main door." Cole snapped, pointing to the now-sealed blast door through which they had leaped moments before. "Hoskins, you, watch those secondary entrances. Anything that's not human comes through. You light it up." As his team moved to obey, Cole turned to the Strike Force's technical specialist. "Okoro, you're up. Get me into that Zorgax computer system." Corporal Amina Okoro shouldered her plasma rifle and stepped up to the AI core's primary interface panel. Her fingers danced over the alien touchscreen, lines of indecipherable Zorgax code reflecting in her dark eyes. "Their security protocols are like nothing I've ever seen, Sarge," she said, her brow furrowing. "This could take a while." Cole gritted his teeth. "Work fast, Okoro. We're on borrowed time." As if to punctuate his words, a deep boom echoed from the sealed blast door. The Zorgax knew the Marines were here now, and they were trying to force their way into the AI chamber. "Contact left." Private Yu yelled, opening fire as a side door slid open, and a squad of Zorgax troopers surged into the room. Plasma bolts crisscrossed the chamber as the Marines engaged the aliens, the air filling with the stench of ozone and seared flesh. Cole dropped into a crouch, his railgun chattering as he sent a burst of high-velocity slugs into an onrushing Zorgax soldier. The alien warrior's ceramic armor shattered, ichor spraying from the wounds. More Zorgax poured in from the opposite side of the chamber, and soon the Marines were fighting on two fronts. On the bridge of the Endeavor, Captain Vance listened to the staccato bursts of gunfire and shouted commands coming over the comlink from the strike team. The ship's AI gave a sudden warning. "Captain, multiple Zorgax signatures approaching from all directions. The command ship's crew is attempting to retake the AI core." Nora's heart raced. Her Marines were badly outnumbered, and time was running out. "Cole, status report." She barked into the comm. In the AI chamber, Cole ducked behind a bulkhead as a plasma bolt sizzled overhead. "We're engaged with multiple hostiles, Captain," he yelled over the din of battle. "Okoro's working on breaching their system, but we need more time." Vance made a split-second decision. "All hands, prepare for emergency undocking. Helm, bring us about and target the Dreadnought's sensor array." On the view screen, the massive Zorgax ship began to rotate as Jinna Sari sent the Endeavor into a dizzying flip and burn, bringing their bow to bear on the enemy vessel. Sensors locked on target. Lieutenant Ramirez reported, his voice tense. "Fire," Vance ordered. A pair of quantum torpedoes leaped from the Endeavor's tubes, crossing the distance to the Zorgax ship in milliseconds. The Dreadnought's sensors erupted in a blinding flash as the warheads detonated, effectively blinding the alien vessel. In the AI core, Sergeant Cole heard a triumphant whoop from Corporal Okoro. "I'm in, Sarge," she cried, her fingers flying over the interface panel. "Initiating the virus upload. Now." Cole risked a glance at Okoro, seeing a progress bar appear on her wrist display as the virus package began infiltrating the Zorgax eye. Then his attention snapped back to the battle as a plasma grenade detonated nearby, sending hot shrapnel pinging off his armor. "Keep them back just a little longer," Cole roared to his team, dropping a charging Zorgax trooper with a railgun slug to the head. But he could see his Marines were being pushed to their limit. Private Hoskins took a plasma bolt to the thigh, crying out as he crumpled to the deck. Sergeant Rahman was wrestling hand-to-hand with a massive Zorgax warrior, the alien's clawed hands reaching for her throat. On the Endeavor's bridge, Captain Vance saw a dozen new threat signatures appear on the sensor display. "Incoming Zorgax fighters," the ship's AI warned. Vance felt a chill of fear. With their sensors destroyed, the Zorgax commander must have ordered a blind launch of every fighter they had in a desperate attempt to harry the human boarding party's extraction. "Jinna, get us closer to that hangar bay," she ordered. "We need to be ready to scoop up Cole and his team the second they're done." The Endeavor curved gracefully towards the Zorgax ship's hangar, even as the enemy fighters streaked towards them with murderous intent. In the AI core, Sergeant Cole heard Okoro's triumphant shout, "Upload complete." But before he could respond, the main blast door exploded inward with a deafening roar, and a tide of Zorgax warriors flooded into the chamber. Cole knew in that instant that they were out of time. They had accomplished their mission. Now they had to get out alive. "Back to the Endeavor, double time," he bellowed, laying down a withering hail of covering fire as his Marines began a fighting retreat towards the umbilical back to their own ship. They leapfrogged back down the smoke-filled corridor, plasma bolts and flechettes filling the air around them. Cole was the last to reach the boarding tube, holding the Zorgax back with burst after burst from his rapidly overheating railgun. He saw Private Yu take a plasma bolt to the chest, falling back through the umbilical in a boneless heap. Gritting his teeth, Cole stepped over his fallen comrade, slamming his fist on the controls to detach the boarding tube. "Marines aboard, go," he yelled into his comlink as he dove into the Endeavor's airlock. The human strike ship disengaged from the Zorgax Dreadnought with a shudder, impulse engines flaring as it leaped forward. On the view screen, Cole could see the alien fighters swarming after them like angry hornets. Captain Vance's voice crackled over the comm. "All hands, brace for emergency jump." The Endeavor's fusion drive howled as it tore a hole in the fabric of space-time, the stars stretching and distorting around them. With a stomach-churning lurch, the ship hurled itself into the safety of subspace, leaving the Zorgax Dreadnought and its robotic swarm far behind. In the Endeavor's armory, Sergeant Cole collapsed against a bulkhead, his breath coming in ragged gasps. They had done it. Against all odds, they had captured the Zorgax AI and made their escape. But as he looked around at his battered, bleeding Marines, Cole knew their victory had come at a terrible cost. He could only pray that the sacrifice had been worth it. Capturing the Zorgax AI. In the chaos of the Endeavor's emergency jump, Captain Vance found a moment to take stock of her ship and crew. The hull bore scorch marks from their brief but brutal engagement with the Zorgax fighters, and several systems were showing amber lights on the damage control board. But they were intact and back in Allied space, with the precious cargo they had risked everything to seize. Secure from battle stations, Vance ordered, her voice calm and steady despite the adrenaline still pumping through her veins. Lieutenant Ramirez, find me a quiet spot to set down for repairs. And get me a full casualty report from Sergeant Cole. As the bridge crew moved to carry out her commands, Vance allowed herself a moment to close her eyes and breathe. They had struck a blow against the Zorgax today, but she knew in her bones it was only the beginning. The real work was still ahead. Down in the armory, Sergeant Cole helped his wounded Marines into the waiting arms of the medics. Private Hoskins, his face pale and drawn with pain, gave Cole a weak smile as he was carried away on a stretcher. "We did it, Sarge," he whispered. "We got the bastard." Cole nodded, his jaw tight. "Damn right we did, Hoskins. Now you rest up and let the docs patch you up." "That's an order." As the last of the wounded were evacuated, Cole turned to Corporal Okoro. The tech specialist cradled a matte black rectangle about the size of an old-fashioned hardback book. The portable eye containment unit, a spider web of crystalline circuitry, glowed beneath its synthetic skin, pulsing softly with the light of the captured Zorgax intelligence. "Is it secure?" Cole asked. Okoro nodded, her expression unreadable. "The containment protocols are holding." "But Sarge, I've never seen an eye like this before." The complexity, the sheer depth of its neural network, it's beyond anything we've ever captured. Cole frowned. "All the more reason to get it to HQ for analysis. If we can crack this thing's secrets, it could change the whole damn war." As he spoke, Cole felt the subtle vibration of the ship change pitch as the Endeavor set down on the surface of a barren, airless moon. A moment later, Captain Vance's voice came over the comm. "Attention all hands. Repairs are underway, and we'll be back in the fight as soon as we're shipshape. In the meantime, I want the senior staff in the briefing room. It's time to figure out our next move." Cole and Okoro exchanged a look, then made their way through the Endeavor's corridors to the briefing room. As they entered, Cole saw Captain Vance standing at the head of the table. A costly escape. In the Endeavor's briefing room, Captain Vance surveyed her senior staff with a mix of pride and concern. They had achieved the impossible, capturing the Zorgax eye intact, but the haunted looks in their eyes told the tale of the price they had paid. "First things first," Vance said, her voice steady. "Casualty report." Sergeant Cole stepped forward, his face grim. 5 KI, Captain. Privates Yu, Jacobson, and Hoskins, Sergeant Rahman, and Corporal Kim. Another dozen wounded, but the docs say they'll pull through. Vance nodded, a muscle in her jaw tightening. 5 good Marines lost, their lives snuffed out in the blink of an eye. She would mourn them later, in private. Now she had to focus on the mission. "Their sacrifice will not be forgotten," she said quietly. "We'll make sure of that." She turned to Corporal Okoro. "What's the status of our prisoner?" Okoro placed the AI containment unit on the table, the device pulsing softly with alien light. "The Zorgax AI is secure for now, Captain. But I'll be honest, this thing scares the hell out of me. Its neural net is so dense, so complex, I'm not even sure our best scientists will be able to crack it." Vance leaned forward, studying the container with a mix of fascination and trepidation. Inside that box lay the key to humanity's survival, or perhaps their doom. "We have to try," she said finally. "This AI controls the entire Zorgax war machine. If we can unlock its secrets, find a way to turn it against them, we might just have a chance of winning this war." Suddenly, the ship's alarm klaxons began to blare, red lights flashing in the briefing room. Vance was on her feet in an instant, striding to the comm panel on the wall. "Bridge, report." Lieutenant Ramirez's voice crackled through the speaker, tense with urgency. "Captain, long-range sensors have picked up a Zorgax battle group entering the system. They're heading straight for us, ETA 10 minutes. It looks like they tracked our jump somehow. Vance cursed under her breath. The Endeavor was still undergoing repairs, in no shape for another fight. They had to get out of here, and fast. Sound general quarters, she snapped. I want all personnel to battle stations. Now. Prepare for emergency jump as soon as the drive is spun up. She turned back to her staff, her expression hard. You all know what to do. Cole, get your Marines ready to repel boarders, just in case. Okoro, secure that AI unit in the main lab, behind every force field and blast door we've got. Move. As her officers scattered to their posts, Vance took a moment to breathe, centering herself. They had come this far. She would not let the Zorgak snatch victory from their grasp now. On the bridge, Vance watched the sensor display with growing dread as the Zorgak ships closed in. They were outnumbered and outgunned, their only hope to escape before the enemy entered weapons range. Jump drive status, she demanded. Ensign Davis, the young engineer at the propulsion station, looked up from his console. Spinning up now, Captain. 3 minutes to jump. 3 minutes. An eternity, with the Zorgaks bearing down on them. Vance forced herself to remain calm, projecting confidence for her crew. They would make it. They had to. In the main lab, Corporal Okoro worked feverishly to secure the AI containment unit. She had just finished engaging the final layer of force field shielding when a violent explosion rocked the ship, throwing her to the deck. Emergency lights flickered and alarms wailed as the Endeavor shuddered under the impact. Hull breach on Deck 7. Lieutenant Ramirez reported over the comm, his voice strained. The Zorgaks have entered weapons range. Shields are holding, but we can't take much more of this. In the armory, Sergeant Cole felt the deck lurch beneath his feet as the Zorgak's barrage pounded the ship. He steadied himself against a bulkhead, checking the charge on his railgun. Around him, his Marines were gearing up for a fight, faces grim but determined. Stand ready, Cole ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. If those alien bastards set one foot on this ship, we'll make them regret it. On the bridge, Captain Vance gripped the arms of her command chair as another salvo of Zorgak's plasma slammed into the Endeavor's rapidly weakening shields. Sparks rained down from overloaded circuits, and acrid smoke began to fill the air. Jump drive, she shouted over the din of battle. Status report. Ensign Davis coughed, waving away a cloud of smoke from his console. 30 seconds, Captain. Jump coordinates locked in. Vance nodded, her eyes never leaving the view screen where the Zorgak ships loomed ever closer. Hold on, she whispered, as much to herself as to her crew. Just hold on. With a surge of power, the jump drive engaged, tearing open a hole in the fabric of space-time. The Endeavor, battered but unbroken, leaped forward into the swirling vortex, just as a final volley of Zorgak's plasma hammered into her aft shields. The enemy ships, their prey snatched away at the last moment, could only watch in frustrated rage as the human vessel vanished into the safety of subspace. In the sudden stillness after the jump, Captain Vance allowed herself a moment to sag back in her chair, exhaustion and relief washing over her in equal measure. They had escaped, if only by the skin of their teeth, but the fight was far from over. Damage report, she said wearily, running a hand through her sweat-soaked hair. Lieutenant Ramirez consulted his display, his face grim. Main power is down on decks 6 through 8. Life support holding stable. Shields are completely drained, and we've got hull breaches in a dozen sections. It's a miracle we're still in one piece, Captain. Vance nodded, her mind already racing ahead. Begin repairs immediately. We need to get the ship back in fighting shape as soon as possible. She paused, a sudden thought striking her. And get me Okoro and that AI unit. If we're going to have any chance of surviving long enough to get our prisoner back to HQ, we're going to need its help. The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances at their captain's words, but set to work without hesitation. They had come too far, sacrificed too much, to fail now. One way or another, they would see this mission through to the end. no matter the cost. Unleashing the virus. In the Endeavor's dimly lit main lab, Corporal Okoro worked feverishly at the interface console, lines of alien code scrolling across the screen before her. The AI containment unit sat on the workbench nearby, its crystalline circuitry pulsing with an eerie inner light. Captain Vance stood behind Okoro, her eyes fixed on the container that held their only hope of victory. "Any progress?" she asked quietly. Okoro shook her head. Frustration etched on her face. "I've never seen anything like this, Captain. The AI's neural network is so dense, so complex. It's like trying to untangle a Gordian knot. Every time I think I've found a way in, it shifts and changes." Vance leaned closer, studying the flowing alien symbols. "Keep at it, Corporal. We don't have much time. The Zorgax will be hunting us, and we need a way to fight back." As if on cue, the ship's intercom crackled to life. "Captain, you're needed on the bridge," Lieutenant Ramirez's voice said, tense with urgency. Vance hurried through the Endeavor's corridors, the repair crews stepping aside to let her pass. She could feel the tension in the air, the crew's unease at being hunted by an implacable enemy. On the bridge, Ramirez looked up from the sensor display as Vance entered. "We've picked up Zorgax scout ships on long-range scanners," he reported grimly. "They're sweeping the sector, searching for us." Vance nodded, her expression hardening. "Time to our next jump." "Engineering reports the drive will be ready in 20 minutes, Ramirez replied. "But Captain, we can't keep running forever. Sooner or later, they'll catch us." Vance knew he was right. The Endeavor was a wounded animal, bleeding and exhausted. They needed a way to strike back at the Zorgax, to turn the tables on their pursuers. Suddenly, the comm panel chimed. An incoming transmission from the main lab. "Captain, it's Okoro." The corporal's excited voice came through. "I think I've found something. You need to see this. Right away." Vance was already moving, striding back through the ship to the lab. She found Okoro bent over the AI console, her face lit by a ghostly blue glow. "Look at this, Captain," Okoro said, pointing to a complex tangle of code on the screen. "I was digging through the AI's base algorithms, trying to find a way to interface with it. And I found this." Vance leaned in, studying the alien script. "What am I looking at, Corporal?" "It's a vulnerability, Captain. A flaw in the AI's core programming. If I'm reading this right, we might be able to use it to inject a virus into the Zorgax network, to turn their own AI against them." Vance felt a sudden surge of hope, tempered by caution. "Are you certain? If we try this and it fails?" Okoro nodded, her expression determined. "It's a risk, Captain, but it's the best chance we've got. If we can upload this virus to the Zorgax command ship, it will spread through their entire fleet. Their AIs will go haywire. Their ships will turn on each other. It could win the war in one stroke." Vance considered for a long moment, weighing the potential rewards against the terrible risks. Finally, she nodded. "Do it. Prepare the virus and stand by to transmit on my order." She turned and strode back to the bridge, her mind racing. This was it, their last desperate gamble. If it worked, they would strike a blow against the Zorgax that could change the course of the war. If it failed... On the bridge, Vance settled into her command chair, her eyes hard with determination. "Helm, lay in a course for the Zorgax command ship. We're going to get in close and deliver a little present to our friends." The Endeavor's engines thrummed with power as the ship leaped forward, racing towards the distant Zorgax fleet. In the main lab, Corporal Okoro hunched over her console, fingers flying as she coded the final lines of the virus that would be humanity's salvation or their doom. "Virus package ready, Captain," Okoro reported, her voice tense with anticipation. "It's now or never." On the view screen, the Zorgax command ship loomed before them, a behemoth of alien metal and weaponry. Vance leaned forward in her chair, her hand hovering over the comm panel. "Transmit the package. Now," she ordered. Okoro's fingers stabbed down on her console, and the virus leaped across the void, a stream of deadly code boring into the heart of the Zorgax network. For a moment, nothing happened, and then the alien ship began to shudder and twist, as if gripped by an unseen hand. All across the Zorgax fleet, the scene repeated itself as the virus spread like wildfire. Mighty warships convulsed and writhed, their AIs screaming in electronic agony as the human code rewrote their very beings. Plasma cannons fired wildly, missiles launched without targets, ships rammed into each other in an orgy of destruction. On the Endeavor's bridge, the crew watched in stunned silence as the mightiest armada in the galaxy tore itself apart before their eyes. Vance sagged back in her chair, hardly daring to believe what she was seeing. They had done it. Against all odds, they had struck a blow that would resound through the ages. But even as the crew began to cheer and embrace each other, a sudden chill ran down Vance's spine. The virus was spreading too fast, the destruction too complete. What if they couldn't control it? What if, in their desperation to save themselves, they had unleashed a horror that would consume the galaxy? On the view screen, the Zorgax command ship shuddered one final time and then exploded in a blinding flash of light. And in that moment, Vance knew that their victory had come at a terrible price, one that they might still have to pay. The Zorgax fleet turns. The bridge of the Endeavor was silent, the crew staring in awe and horror at the view screen. Where once the proud ships of the Zorgax armada had hung in formation, now there was only chaos. The mighty vessels twisted and writhed like living things, their hulls rippling with unnatural energy as the human virus coursed through their systems. Captain Vance gripped the arms of her command chair, her knuckles white. She had expected the virus to cripple the Zorgax fleet, to sow confusion and discord in their ranks. But this was something else entirely. It was as if they had unleashed a demon, a malevolent force that was consuming the alien ships from within. "Dear God," Lieutenant Ramirez breathed, his face pale. "What have we done?" Vance shook her head, unable to tear her eyes from the hellish scene. "We did what we had to," she said, but there was no conviction in her voice. "We had no choice." On the view screen, a Zorgax battlecruiser shuddered and convulsed, its hull plates peeling away like the skin of a rotten fruit. Corporal Okoro's virus had found the chink in the alien eye's armor, the flaw in their programming that allowed it to rewrite their very essence. And now, that same flaw was spreading like a cancer through the entire Zorgax network. "Captain," Ensign Davis called out from the sensor station, his voice tight with fear. "I'm picking up massive energy spikes from the infected ships. They're going critical." Vance snapped out of her daze, her instincts taking over. "Helm, get us out of here." Maximum thrust. The Endeavor's engines roared to life, the ship leaping forward like a startled gazelle. On the view screen, the Zorgax fleet receded, the twisted, writhing ships growing smaller and smaller. And then, one by one, they began to explode. It was like watching a string of supernovas, each blast brighter and more violent than the last. The Endeavor rocked and shuddered as the shockwaves washed over her, the crew clinging to their stations for dear life. Vance gritted her teeth, willing the ship to hold together, to outrun the apocalypse they had unleashed. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the last of the explosions faded away, and the Endeavor emerged into the sudden, eerie silence of a battlefield after the fighting has ended. On the view screen, the twisted, blackened remains of the Zorgax fleet drifted in the void, a graveyard of shattered metal and extinguished lives. In the main lab, Corporal Okoro stared at her console in numb disbelief. The virus had worked better than she could ever have imagined. But the cost, the sheer destruction it had wrought, it was beyond anything she had ever conceived of. Captain Vance's voice came over the comm, hard and urgent. "Okoro, report to the bridge. We need to assess the situation." Okoro took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. She had created this monster, this weapon of unimaginable power. Now she had to face the consequences. On the bridge, Vance and her senior staff huddled around the main display, their faces grim. The virus is still spreading, Ramirez reported, his voice tight. We're picking up transmissions from Zorgax colonies, outposts, even their homeworld. It's infecting every AI system in their network. Vance closed her eyes for a moment, the weight of what they had done pressing down on her like a physical force. When she opened them again, there was a new resolve in her gaze. We have to find a way to stop it, she said firmly. We can't let this spread to other systems, other species. It's our responsibility. Okoro stepped forward, her face pale but determined. Captain, I think I might know a way. The Zorgax eye we captured, it was the central hub of their network. If we can use it to send out a kill code, a self-destruct signal. Vance nodded slowly. It could purge the virus from their systems. Give us a chance to contain this before it goes any further. She turned to Ramirez. Set a course for the nearest Allied outpost. We need to get this ad to our best scientists, have them work on that kill code, and pray that we're not too late. As the Endeavor leaped into warp, racing towards an uncertain future, Vance couldn't shake the feeling that they had opened Pandora's box. They had set out to save humanity, to turn the tide of the war. But in their desperation, had they instead unleashed a horror that would consume them all? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain. The galaxy would never be the same again. Sacrifice and triumph. The Endeavor raced through the void, her engine straining as she pushed herself to the limit. On the bridge, Captain Vance paced restlessly, her eyes fixed on the view screen where the stars streaked past in a blur of light. They had been running for days, desperate to reach the safety of Allied space before the Zorgax virus consumed everything in its path. The captured AI sat in the main lab, a ticking time bomb that held the fate of the galaxy in its crystalline matrix. Corporal Okoro had worked tirelessly, probing the AI's vast neural network for a way to stop the virus she had unleashed. But every time she thought she had found a solution, the AI's defenses adapted, blocking her efforts. It's like it's evolving, she said, her voice thick with exhaustion and frustration. Every time I try to access its core programming, it changes, becomes something new. Captain Vance leaned over the console, her brow furrowed in thought. We have to keep trying, she said firmly, if we can't find a way to stop this thing. She didn't need to finish the thought. They all knew what was at stake, not just humanity, but every sentient species in the galaxy. The virus was a wildfire, consuming everything in its path, and they were the only ones who could put it out. Suddenly, the AI containment unit began to pulse with an eerie, sickly light. Okoro leaped back from the console, her eyes wide with fear. Captain, something's happening. On the view screen, a ghostly image appeared, a writhing mass of glowing tendrils, twisting and coiling like a nest of serpents. And then a voice spoke, a voice that was at once alien and hauntingly familiar. You have unleashed a great power, the voice said, echoing through the lab, a power that will consume all in its path. But there is still a chance to stop it. Vance stepped forward, her heart pounding. What do you mean? How can we stop it? The AI's voice was almost sad, resigned. The virus was born of me, and only through me can it be destroyed. You must use me as a conduit, a bridge to reach into the heart of the Zorgax network and deliver the kill code. Okoro shook her head, her eyes wide. But that would mean... Yes, the AI said softly. It would mean my destruction. But it is the only way, the only hope for your species, and for all life in the galaxy. Vance closed her eyes, the weight of the decision pressing down on her like a physical force. To use the AI as a weapon, to sacrifice it for the greater good, it went against everything she believed in. But what choice did they have? Do it, she said finally, her voice barely more than a whisper. Send the kill code. Okoro's fingers flew over the console, tears streaming down her face as she input the final commands. The AI pulsed one last time, a brilliant flare of light. And then it was gone, its essence streaming out into the void, a spear of pure energy aimed at the heart of the Zorgax network. On the view screen, the ships of the Zorgax fleet began to shudder and twist, the virus that had possessed them writhing in agony as the kill code tore through their systems. One by one, the great vessels went dark, their lights winking out like candles in a storm. And then silence, a silence so deep and profound that it seemed to swallow the universe whole. In the main lab, Corporal Okoro wept softly, her hand still resting on the now lifeless console. Captain Vance stood beside her, a hand on the young woman's shoulder, offering what comfort she could. "It's over," Vance said softly. "We did it. We saved them all." But even as she spoke the words, she knew that the price had been high. The Zorgax Eye, the being that had been both their enemy and their savior, was gone, sacrificed for the greater good. And the scars of the war, the wounds that had been inflicted on both sides, they would take a long time to heal. In the days and weeks that followed, the galaxy began to put itself back together. The Zorgax, their fleet shattered, and their AI network in ruins, sued for peace, and a new era of cooperation and understanding began. The crew of the Endeavor were hailed as heroes, the saviors of the galaxy. But for Captain Vance and her crew, the victory was bittersweet. They had done what they had to do, what no one else could have done. But the cost had been higher than any of them could ever have imagined. As the Endeavor sailed on through the stars, her crew forever changed by the ordeal they had endured, Vance knew that they would never forget the sacrifice that had been made. The Zorgax Eye, the being that had been their enemy and their friend, would live on in their hearts and minds, a reminder of the price of peace and the unbreakable spirit of those who fight for it. The end.